A listener warning. Please be advised that this episode contains content that may be disturbing to some listeners, including descriptions of violence and gore, specifically at the 56-minute to 1 hour and 14-minute mark. If you wish to skip ahead, please feel free to do so. Listener discretion is advised.
Life upon the wicked stage ain't ever what a girl supposes.
I'm Jen,
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Olivia.
and we are, in fact, three different people.
This podcast focuses on true crime under the spotlight of arts and entertainment. So grab your beverage of choice and settle in.
Places, ladies.
Here's our episode. Guys, look
made
at
it.
us.
It is our season 1 finale episode.
I know.
Brilliant.
Part 1.
Part one.
Part one.
We can't
Because
just have
we
one.
can't get off the stage that easily.
No, we're just a little bit extra. So
right.
encore. Well, hey
So-
everybody. I'm Jen, and as always, I have 3 beverages: tea, caffeine, water, wine. That's always. We have tea, water, and a
That's
cab
life.
today.
That's life.
Ashley, that is life. We have a cab today. And I'm wearing earrings that really are not comfortable under these headphones, but we're gonna suffer for the art. It's fine.
We're going to go with it for now. I'm Ashley, and I am coming at you today with entirely too much wine.
Whoa.
I poured in a hurry, and this is what happened. Also, I have some terrible trivia to share. It's going to be great.
Okay.
Excellent.
Not just trivia, terrible trivia.
Mhm.
Terrible trivia. Yeah.
And that is a mega pint, by the way. I think they call it a mega pint.
I feel that I want Ashley to be my bartender, like always. Look at that.
Yeah.
for me.
I was pouring quickly. I was running a little behind because I was like, I spent too long doing my dramatic lip here.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you're not watching our video, we all have a dramatic red lip today.
And a dramatic black top. You absolutely
lace
cannot
and
tell us apart
cutouts.
right now.
And who are you, third lady?
I'm Olivia, and I had to change my earrings because they were so dramatic. They were getting caught in my lace. I have a funny working actress story that involves
Tell me.
Jen that I've been
Oh,
waiting
what?
for all of us to be together. So I was at a work dinner on Friday. Sounds very fancy and
You're
important.
so fancy and important.
I'm so fancy. And one of my coworkers said that she loves to watch the Hallmark Christmas movies. And she's like, listen, at the end of the day, I've talked way too much. I've made too many decisions. My
Yeah.
brain is tired. I just want a Hallmark romance movie.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this is kind of funny. I said, my friend is an actor. Pause for effect. Of course, no one was shocked. And I was like, she actually has the lead in one of those, like a Hallmark knockoff movie. I said,
Yeah,
it's not
that's what
actually
it is.
on Hallmark, but it could be. I said, it's on, I think
Could
it's on
be.
Amazon Prime.
Same flavor.
It's called Let Love Grow. And my coworker like grabs my arm. She goes, wait, what's that one about? And I was like, well, so I start telling her the plot. She goes, I just watched that last week. Oh my God. So I pulled up, everybody around the table is cracking
Yeah.
up. So I pulled up the movie poster and she was like, that's it. I go, that's my best friend.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
They were all like, oh my God, she's so pretty. And I was like, I
Aw.
know, right?
You know, right?
So anyway, it was
Aw.
a very cute, funny,
Oh,
like
man.
moment. Yeah.
I'm so
Jen
excited.
has fans. Jen
I
has
has
have
fans.
fans.
Jen's
Do
a
you
pretty
know-
big deal.
Jen,
So
what is
exciting.
it about?
Today we are talking about Elizabeth Short, the murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia.
Oh, so
Which
excited.
listeners, if you're not watching, and you should be, ergo our bold lip and black lacy tops. We
Yes.
yes. it up for the Black Dahlia.
Listeners,
Yeah.
we're recording this in 2 parts because
Yes.
there's so much content. Jen, tell
Yes.
us the headlines here about the Black Dahlia, because I feel like for me, as much as I love true crime, like I know really,
Really?
broad strokes about the case.
Okay.
There is so much to this case, and it's so dense, and there are so many details. And all
Mhm.
I know is like super famous Hollywood unsolved
Mhm.
case. Grisly, but I
Very
don't know
grisly.
anything
Yeah.
about like the players or the
Okay.
history. It's very murky to me. So what are the headlines? What do we
I'm
need
glad
to
you
know?
said that because I was going to ask. This is something that I don't know how long I've known about it, but it feels like my whole life.
Yeah.
I've heard the term Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yep.
But many people don't know her name. So that's one of the things we're really going to get into is who Elizabeth Short was.
Yeah.
So, in broad strokes, the 1947 murder of Elizabeth Short, who came to be known as the Black Dahlia, is one of the oldest cold cases in Los Angeles. So, spoiler alert, we do not know who did it.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Not only was it a horrific crime, but it's also proven notoriously difficult to solve.
And I can't wait to hear why, because it is
Yeah.
so grisly and graphic. How could there not be clues everywhere?
Right?
You
And I
know?
think there were.
Like
And I
Scooby
think
Doo cartoon. Well, there were
Yes.
clues.
Yes. I think maybe there were, and I personally think that maybe they were hidden. So we'll get into that.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
All right.
there is a lot. Again, this is a two-parter. There is both fact, there is fiction, and there is everything in between. So I'm going to do my best to state the facts as I found them.
Just the
Okay.
facts, ma'am.
Just the facts, man. And there's a lot of those too. We will speculate wildly in part two. Hopefully, I would love us all to speculate wildly about who we think committed this atrocious crime. I
I'm
will
excited.
say that I'm so sorry. The one book that I read
Yeah.
is this,
Mhm.
The Black Dahlia Files. It's by Donald H. Wolfe. And it's fantastic. And that's where I got most of my information. Obviously, also the internet and very funnily enough, the FBI because of the Freedom of Information Act, a lot of the files on the Black Dahlia were released to the public, and that's how we have more information now than the public had in 1947. So,
Maybe we're gonna solve it. Maybe this is how we
maybe we
become world
will.
famous.
Maybe
Maybe it's us.
it
This
could
is
be it.
it right
And
here.
this is it, the rest of our lives. So, who is she? Elizabeth Short, or Beth, was born on July 29th, 1924, in Massachusetts. She was the third of five daughters of Cleo and Phoebe Short. Short family lived in Medford, Massachusetts. It's a suburb of Boston. And her
Messa.
father,
Meth.
Short's father built miniature golf courses, which apparently was a booming business. They were doing very well.
What? You
Yeah,
can do that? I
apparent
mean, of
well,
course somebody does that.
but sadly, he lost most of his savings in the 1929 stock market crash.
Ooh.
In 1930, his car was found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge, and it was
Uh-oh.
assumed that
Oh,
he
yeah.
jumped into the Charles River.
A lot of
Mm.
people there was a lot of
A
suicides
lot of
after the
suicides. Yeah. So, believing her husband to be deceased, Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe, began working as a bookkeeper to support the family because beforehand she was just a housewife taking care of the kids, right? Elizabeth was troubled. I
What
know,
is a
sigh.
sigh, actually, is because all
Just
our
a
stories
deep
start this way, like, and then the mother had to sell her children into show
Right?
business
Oh my
because
god,
the
you're
father
so
died.
right,
I was
because
like,
or left them or this,
Mhm.
that, and the other.
yet another man just failing to do the bare minimum and
Yep,
leaving a
Like
disadvantaged
staying alive.
woman
and her
to
children, 5
ca
children.
to carry the whole weight of the
Right.
everything. Like, my
Oh, he's a piece of work, so
Oh, are we gonna get into that?
we get a little more about
Okay,
Cleo
alright.
Short. You can hate him right now, it's fine. So, Elizabeth was troubled by, bronchitis and severe asthma attacks, so she actually underwent lung surgery at age 15.
Oh,
In the
wow.
20s? Oh
Well,
god.
the 30s,
Well,
yeah, isn't that
30s.
insane?
Oh, yeah. Whoa.
Yikes.
After which, doctors suggested she periodically relocate to a milder climate to prevent further respiratory problems. So guess where she came?
Mm,
Florida, where
nice.
everyone
Incredible.
summers.
Somewhere
You
in
know,
Florida on account of the
yeah,
bronchitis.
uh-huh. Yeah, so her mother sent her to Miami for like 3 years to stay with some family friends so that she could stay.
Wow.
Elizabeth dropped out of high school her sophomore year. And her mother, Phoebe, also mentioned and made comments about her moods, indicating that she suffered from undiagnosed and therefore untreated bipolar disorder.
Uh-oh.
So
Oh.
she had some pretty intense mood swings.
Okay.
In
Mm.
late 1942, Elizabeth's mother received a letter of apology from her presumed dead husband,
Kidding me?
revealing that he was alive and well.
Whoa!
Uh-huh.
Wait a second, I did not see that coming at all in this story.
Yep.
What?
10 years. He says, "Oh, hey, I'm alive and well. I just started a new life in California."
That
Just
motherfucker.
he just fully
Up and
fucked off to
left. Yep.
Was it the money and he was like, "I'm running from debt," or was he just like, "I'm
Right.
not feeling this"? Like, what was his
It
excuse?
it was, from what I read, it was money, but not necessarily like, uh, I have debts. It was more like he was ashamed and he couldn't take care of her anymore, so
Oh,
they
I'm
his
sorry.
family, so they ran away. So he
So
ran
his
away from it.
Not
ego his
better.
No,
ego
not
got
better at all.
bruised. His ego got
Yeah,
bruised, so
basically.
he decided
Yeah,
to
peace
pretend
out.
to fake his death.
Mhm. I guess he hopped a bus or a train and just went cross country because he left his car on the
Was there at
Charlestown
least
Bridge.
like a life insurance policy they got in claiming his No. No.
No,
She
No,
can't
because
do
you
that
need a
shit.
because
body
you
usually to
need a body,
prove that they're dead,
and
like
he
proof
did
of
have
death.
some debt, so that was, so they had to take care of all of that. Yeah,
The
I mean, it wasn't, I don't know how much, but
Once again, this is just like some men would rather do anything, like, rather than go to therapy. They're like,
right? I'll jump off this bridge,
"Could
but
talk
not
to
really.
someone now. Let me fake my
Like, yeah.
death and just
Yeah, see you later.
across the country."
Yeah,
Yet
So
another
much more
case
work.
of a man needing mental help.
yeah. Go to therapy, everybody.
Uh,
Did his letter say he wanted to come back, or was it just that,
Yeah,
"Hey,
he was like, "Hey, I'm alive and, sorry, and I'd love to, like, have my family back. I'm living in California." And she was like, "No."
wow."
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time before I'll say, like, some man attempts something like this on, like, Love Is Blind or one of these TV
One of
shows,
these reality shows.
appearing on The Bachelor, and then, like, a woman comes forward and is like, "This is my husband who faked his death." Like,
He was pronounced dead 5 years ago, and he's now on The Bachelor. Oh my god, Ashley, that
TM, 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 because if they do that now, that was your idea. Like, we're
that is
getting it.
amazing. That
I'm sure this has almost happened if it hasn't already happened.
It was easier to fake your death in the 1930s, but still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For sure. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
Phoebe says, "No, I'm good.
No,
Like,
I'm good.
just
Thank
be on your way."
you. Mhm. However, Elizabeth, in December at age 18, moved to Vallejo, where he was living, California. She hadn't seen him since she was 6 years old, but Elizabeth, they say, had aspirations of being in the movies.
Aha.
So, this is a great way to do it. Your dad lives there, he
Yep.
owes you. I mean, really?
Good god, but the baggage. Ooh.
Well, yes,
Get on that shame train and
and I think she has a lot of it. Arguments between Elizabeth and her father led to her moving out in January 1943, so she only lived there for a
oh,
month.
that was
A
quick.
month.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently, he was like, "Well, she was supposed to do all of my housework, and all she was doing was going out and being an 18-year-old." So, like, yeah, I know,
I'm
flip that
flipping
table,
a
Olivia.
throw right now. I'm flipping a table.
Yep.
She's a
Yeah,
woman, she should do the housework.
correct.
Also, I love that, like, I abandoned the family and
Yeah,
faked my own
right?
death, and
Right.
now maybe my daughter, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt, wants to reconnect with me slash have a career, and I'm pissed because she's not taking care of my
Mm.
Of
house.
Not taking
me.
care of me.
Yeah.
Of me.
And
Like,
she's
oh.
18, she was going on dates, she was living it up, trying to have fun, right? And he was mad, so she was like, "Okay, bye."
Okay, bye. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
Yeah,
gosh.
you were right, Jen. We hate him.
we hate
It
him.
was okay.
So, she moved north and took a job at the base exchange at Camp Cook. She was living at the time, they believe, the US Army Air Force sergeant, I don't have his name, who apparently abused her. Mhm.
Mm.
She left that area in mid 1943. She was like, "I'm out." She moved to Santa Barbara, so this was a little area outside of it, where
Mhm.
she was arrested on September 23rd, 1943 for drinking at a local bar while underage.
Is
Oh,
this the mugshot we have of her that's,
it
like,
Yeah,
semi-famous?
it's the
Okay.
mugshot of Elizabeth Short. So juvenile authorities sent her back to Massachusetts, where she briefly stayed before returning to Florida. So she moved around a lot. She was in Chicago at one point as well. Uh, She moved. While she was in Florida, she met Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., a
another
decorated
military.
another there's a lot, yes. It's the war. It's
Yeah, yeah.
World War II is
Oh,
happening.
there was the war on.
The
That's
war
right.
was on.
Ye
So
old draft. Yeah.
he was an Air Force officer and he was training for deployment to Southeast Asia. She later told her friends that Gordon had written to propose marriage while he was recovering from injuries from a plane crash. She accepted his offer,
Oh,
but Gordon died in a test flight on August 10th, 1945, the day before he was supposed to be sent home.
Oh, that's
Oh.
So
terrible.
terrible. Sadly, there are no letters to prove that he actually did propose, and this kind of becomes a little bit of a
Mm.
theme with Elizabeth.
Oh.
Like,
So, and I
you
think this
exaggerated
is
the relationship
Like, so
or
she started
yeah.
telling people that he had interesting,
Mhm.
okay.
Ugh.
So, that's why we talked about the bipolar, and I think there were
Oh.
some things going on with
A little bit of
Elizabeth.
histrionic personality there.
Yes, however, who knows what they were saying to her because, "Oh, I'm going off to war,"
Well,
you
that's
know?
true, and there's this whole
So,
sense of, like, the bravado of, like, I'm overseas and I might die,
"I might
and
die,
so
marry
it's
me."
yeah, marry me, it's very dramatic,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I can so see I can see it both ways. I can see how
Yes.
she would potentially exaggerate the relationship, or it's like, "It's George Glass, yes, he's asked me to marry him," like, I could
Yeah,
see that, and I could also see something where he is just as, sort of over the top as she is, and is like, "Oh, I may die tomorrow, like, let's
right.
be wed." Like, I can
Right.
see both. Yeah.
Totally,
Me
totally.
too. And there were a few other men who had received similar letters from Elizabeth, kind of full of love and wanting. But again, we don't know. I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? I think a little
Okay.
bit of both is true. Matthew wrote his mother saying it seemed Elizabeth was in love with him, and she had written him 27 letters in 11 days.
That's a lot of letters.
A lot of letters.
27 letters
That's
in
more than 2
11
letters a
days?
day.
You know what? He would have been one of those guys in current times
Mhm.
that sends a text, but doesn't send all his thoughts together in one text. Like, your phone starts going ding, 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 and you're like,
That's
"Take a
Elizabeth.
second and think
Write it
of
all out.
one text with a couple paragraphs." He probably was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, and this. Oh, and this. Oh, and this."
Yeah.
Anyway.
But in her belongings after her death, allegedly, there was a newspaper clipping announcing Matthew's engagement to another woman whose name had been scratched out. So we don't know who this other woman was. Now, it's allegedly. I've only saw it a couple places. And like I said,
Mm.
there are a lot of different rumors and stuff. So what's true, what isn't? Um,
Hmm.
I just think Elizabeth wanted very badly to be loved.
Who doesn't wanna be loved?
Who doesn't want to be loved?
Even if you don't have that history of trauma, you still
Yeah.
want that, like, love and acceptance from
Oh,
a
you
romantic
do.
partner. Like,
Of course.
most people want that. That's a
Yeah.
very normal human need.
Correct. And I think, like I said before, it was a little bit of both. I mean, Elizabeth was a beautiful girl. She was a
Yes.
beautiful woman.
Gorgeous.
She had jet black hair. She had green eyes, very pale skin. I mean, any one of us could play her on stage.
Wait
All of us.
wait a second.
I mean,
Hold
Elizabeth,
on.
we're here for you.
Had she lived, she
Yes.
might have looked like one of
She
us.
would have been the 4th on this podcast of
Yes,
Sensational
Elizabeth
Discovery.
would have been podcasting with us
Yes.
100%. The
Aw.
only flaw was said to be poor teeth because she didn't have the money to go to the dentist, and she actually
Mm.
covered them with paraffin wax. She would melt paraffin wax and then cover them to, like, make them look better,
Really?
like, to fill
Like,
in the cavities.
even?
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, very interesting, right? I don't
Oh,
know.
wow.
Yeah.
So in May 1946, Elizabeth relocated to Los Angeles from Santa Barbara, where she was, and she began working as a waitress, question mark, and rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. Side note, it's still there. And it's still run as a nightclub, and I think we should add it to our list of places to go.
Why was
Yeah.
she a waitress question mark?
Because there was another job she could have had, which I'm gonna tell you about in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
So, this club was co-owned by one Mark Hansen, who also owned the rooms behind the club that she stayed in. She would live off and on here for a few months. Elizabeth was constantly moving and almost always broke.
Mm.
Not a good
It
waitress?
not a good way, not a good waitress, question mark. She didn't make good tips.
The fries are cold, she's showing up at the
Or
table.
she only worked when she had to, or other people were paying for her. Maybe.
Yeah.
So in July 1946, she spent some time with Army Air Force again. She liked those Army Air Force guys. Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Thickling. He was acquaintance from Florida who was stationed in Long Beach. But again, this was kind of a situationship that Elizabeth thought was more.
Mm. But haven't we all been guilty of thinking a
Oh, yeah.
situationship is maybe more than it
Oh,
is?
yeah.
This is the
And why
first
are we
time.
guilty of that? Because we're led on to believe so, usually. So, a little bit of
Absolutely.
both.
Wait, this is the first time I've heard the word situationship. Is this like
You
trending with
never
the
heard that
people?
before?
No.
Olivia, what?
Where
Yes.
are you? She's happily married, that's why.
Oh,
Listen, but I'm working in a college. I should be hearing these
These words.
Olivia,
um,
it's exactly what you think it is, a
mhm.
situationship. It's not like a full-blown relationship, but it's like I think it's sort of the current equivalent of like we're talking, like
Yeah.
it's something like
Okay,
we're
okay.
talking, like we've made out, etc. We're
Mhm,
whatever,
okay.
but we're not like officially in a
We're not
relationship.
official.
I
Maybe
like
there's
it.
drama, like maybe there's extenuating circumstances, maybe he's not ready, like,
Maybe
whatever it is.
one of you is off the apps, but the other isn't.
A
Oh,
situationship. Yeah.
Mhm.
situation. So it's a
Like, we're
situation. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
yeah, it's like
there we
we're
go. It's a learning moment.
coworkers.
I love it. In August 1946, she checked into the Hawthorne Hotel with two roommates, Marjorie Graham and Lynn Martin, just because we know who these ladies are, and they are interviewed later. The desk clerk at this hotel noted that she was almost always late with her rent, and it was often paid for by a man with a dark complexion, medium build, about 5'6", driving a black Ford sedan. That's important.
And that
Huh.
doesn't fit the description of any of her military men?
No.
Okay.
So
Elizabeth, another man. Yeah.
just a
There were
short king and a black Ford.
yes, and she called him Maurice. She
Maurice, the
Maurice.
baguettes. Hurry up. Sorry.
Crazy old
No,
Maurice, huh?
exactly.
Crazy old
Maurice.
Maurice.
That's
Yeah.
him. She checked out of the Hawthorne on September 28th, 1946, loading her bags into this black Ford sedan. So this man is thought to be Maurice Clement, who is someone that was well known for working for mobsters Bugsy Siegel and Mickey Cohen. Guys,
Mm.
Aha.
this shit gets insane.
So she has a mobster paying her
Like
rent.
a mobster's like minion,
Right,
basically.
right.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, well,
And these
we're keeping
yeah.
some dangerous company here.
Uh-huh. And these guys basically run Los Angeles at this point in time. I
Yeah,
mean,
Bugsy
when I
Siegel,
say
hello.
corruption, it doesn't even begin to I'm gonna get into it, but it's so much deeper than we're gonna cover because it's so complicated and there's so much. But
Capital C corruption. Yeah.
yes. Quick sidebar, because this is fun for me. Bugsy Siegel was actually the head of the Extras Guild at this time. So basically, if you were an extra in a movie, you were working for the mob.
Bugsy Siegel.
Yeah,
Wow.
he ran the Extras Guild. He had an office and everything. Isn't that
That's
crazy?
crazy. That is
He
crazy. I had no idea
tried
about this.
to be the head of the Screen Actors Guild, but he didn't get that, so he got the extras.
Wait, so
Wow.
this is in the 1940s. So we're
Yeah.
thinking some of like the golden films of this
Yes.
era in Hollywood. If you see
Mhm.
people in the background, just know those people were somehow obliquely under the thumb of the mob.
Yep. So Maurice also worked for the talent department at Columbia Studios. This is what he did. He set up meetings with big wigs of the studios and Hollywood stars, execs, everybody, with girls who worked for a woman named Brenda Allen.
I
Brenda
know why you were
Allen,
gonna say Barbara Allen.
so
It's that
yeah,
song. Yeah,
Brenda Allen, I know.
Barbara Allen.
Brenda Allen was the notorious leader of the sex ring of the Syndicate, which was, in a nutshell, an underground network of brothels, gambling, and sale of illegal liquor during Prohibition. The Syndicate was
Interesting.
tied to the mob,
Of course.
obviously, because they ran it,
Prohibition, yeah.
Casual.
politicians, and LAPD. When I say
Yeah.
LA was corrupt,
Yeah.
we are
Yep.
not even getting into half of
Yep.
it. Brenda dated a vice cop to protect herself, who eventually became her partner in the business, paying off other vice cops to protect the syndicate. Everybody's getting paid off. There are
Oh
very few straight
my
cops
god.
on the LAPD in 1940s.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez.
insane. It's I
Wow.
can't, guys. And
Like
most of the girls were like aspiring actors. Like they're out there
sure.
trying to be stars, and they have no
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
right?
No, they think they're
Right.
gonna be, Rita Hayworth, and it's like, "Sorry,
Mhm.
sweetie." Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Elizabeth Short part of the syndicate?
Well, in yes, I think so, and
Okay.
there is evidence to say yes, but maybe not as a sex worker, maybe as something else. I just want to say this first that the clientele of all of these people, they were gangsters, Hollywood stars, politicians. So, I
Yep.
mean, it's dirty. It's a dirty
Yeah.
place to be. Side note, I think it's important. 5 weeks after the Black Dahlia murder, there was a hit taken out on Brenda Allen.
Oh,
Really?
She survived, but
she
I just
survived.
think it's interesting.
What
That
was the nature of the hit? Like, did it just, like, get botched,
Gunman.
or was she actually attacked?
She was attacked. She and this guy, her partner, were sitting in a car and 2 gunmen came up and shot at them, but he was a cop, so he was able to, like, disarm them
Oh my gosh.
and they walked away. Um,
Mm.
Also, so we're getting to the murder, which happened in January. That same year was when Bugsy Siegel was shot.
so
Mm.
somebody they were closing down operations on
I
something. That's what it sounds like.
Something is afoot in this
we're
underworld.
gonna speculate wildly next time we,
Okay,
talk.
okay,
So,
okay. So we're gonna save the speculation. Okay,
yeah,
okay, okay. Just the
Oh,
facts,
man.
ma'am. Just the facts.
just the
Got it.
Just the
facts.
facts, ma'am. Yep.
So, along with the sex workers, there were also B-girls. So these are girls that were used in clubs like the Florentine Gardens to keep men interested, drinking, and spending money. So
Oh,
that is what they think Elizabeth Short was doing at the Florentine
okay.
Gardens. So she wasn't a waitress, she was a B-girl. Sometimes that means you left with the men. I
Oh,
think I read in this book, and I could be wrong, but I remember reading, like, sometimes they drug them to get out so they didn't have to do anything, but they'd, like, still go home with them.
wait. The girls would drug the guys.
Mhm.
I
To
support
leave,
this.
to be able to leave. Like, they'd be like, "Oh, it's so good." Roofie,
It's like
roofie, roofie,
I.
out.
incredible.
Yeah.
A reverse roofie situation.
So was this why Elizabeth was with all these different men, and they talk about all these different men that she was with because she was a B girl, she's, like, doing her
Yeah.
job?
I feel like it's not unlike our earlier episode on Nell Gwynn when they were at the body house and the
Yeah.
orange girls. And it was
Right.
like they were flirtatious and pouring drinks, but they weren't like full blown sex workers. They were just there like show you a good time and like we're
Exactly.
here for the fun.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. Even
No,
till
nothing has
from
changed.
Nell Gwynn to Elizabeth Short till now,
No,
nothing has changed.
nothing has
We
changed, guys.
still have these same
Exactly.
situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the show at the Florentine Gardens was a burlesque show,
Ooh,
as we have talked about many times before. And it is said
We're at
that
the
she
height
was
of
actually,
burlesque.
yes, and a lot of girls that ended up being B girls or sex girls were promised roles in that show
in
that
the
and
show,
it just
sure.
never actually happened. And it is said that she was promised a role in that show by her
Mm.
friend Ann Toth, who was an actress.
Okay.
Ann Toth was also one of the girlfriends of the co-owner, Mark Hansen.
Hmm.
So Mark Hansen was married, and, let's just say I know, sigh.
It's like
Let's just say
exhausting, isn't
it's
it?
right, because it's
Just
always the same thing. It's just
exhausting.
You know,
repeat, 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 right? So, Mark Hansen, the co-owner of the Florentine Gardens, he had, let's say, a very dramatic and territorial view of his, I don't know, or hold, we could say, on Elizabeth. So he was really
Mm.
taken with her, but he was also taken with every chorus girl and actress that he came across. So,
It was
I
just
think
his
that it's
MO.
time for just all
Okay.
right. I mean, he deserves it. But in the book that I read, it is stated that she not only stayed in the rooms behind the club that he owned, but also on 2 different occasions for different amounts of time, she stayed at Mark Hansen's actual home. And
Whoop.
apparently he did this with his favorites.
Okay. Well, we know exactly what was going on.
We do. So Elizabeth, while staying there, would continue to go out with other men. Again, was it for her job or was she just going out with other men? We don't know. Was she just like sex positive? Good for her in 1940, whatever.
No.
But they had to drop her off like a block away because Mark would get so insanely jealous.
see, I
Oh.
and like you said, Jen, like I don't love this because we have someone who's relatively young. I'm assuming she's in
Mhm.
her early 20s at this
Yes.
point.
She's
But
22 when everything goes down. So,
okay, so like we have a relatively young woman,
mhm.
and at the same time, like we've said, she is financially challenged and just does not have a whole lot of autonomy if
Yes.
you have to, maintain a relationship to maintain some sort of like, financial security with one man. At the same time, you have to hide like relationships or friendships with
Yeah.
other people. It's like, drop me off a block away so,
Yeah.
he doesn't get mad and beat me or like throw me out or whatever the situation is. Like, this is not great. And I can see people making the argument about like, oh yeah, you're a sex worker, you're consenting adults, but it's like this feels like much like
No, no,
indentured
no.
servitude almost, where it's like you don't have a lot of choices. You're really not in control
Yeah.
of your finances or your goings on. Like this is kind of icky. Like you're not I don't feel like she was actively choosing everything about this.
No, I
No,
think she
and then
found herself in a horrible situation
Yeah.
and did not have
yeah.
the means to
Yeah.
get out of it, and obviously did not have the family
Right.
Right.
to she couldn't call her dad
Yeah,
and,
there's no support. Yeah.
no.
I truly feel like she's one of these I think when there were people, even if they took advantage of her, they still wanted to help her. There was like a weird, like,
Mm.
I can
Oh,
see
yes,
there's
the savior thing, I'm
savior
gonna
Yeah.
save this
complex,
I'll
right?
save
woman.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
She was 100% like a girl off the bus. Like, she's
right.
naive,
Mhm.
she's coming I mean, again, and we talked about it before, it's like me coming to Orlando. I mean, it's a stupid thing, but it's true. You come from a place where you don't know, and somebody who you think can help you takes unbelievable advantage of you,
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
and that
right.
I think that's what's going on,
Yes.
you
And
know?
and again, I think it is hard, for anyone, regardless of how old you are,
Yeah.
your bullshit meter, especially when you're
Oh,
meeting new people and especially in, a professional setting. Because like you said, Jen, she wanted to have this career like
yes.
as an actress. And how many people would say, like, oh, I can help you or I'll connect you. Like no predator comes in and is like, hey,
Yeah.
uh I would like to control you. I would like to,
Right, they
own
don't
you.
tell
Like,
you the truth.
that's not how they roll up. They like, "Oh, I'll introduce you to, like, a director," or, "I'm gonna put you in a show," or, fill in the blank. But I'm sure a lot of this was presented as, like, career opportunity
Of
for
course.
her
And
Yeah,
she wasn't the
and these
only
other
one.
women.
She's
no,
not
she
alone in this
wasn't.
situation.
Yeah,
She's surrounded by, dozens of other women in the exact same situation, so
exact
that
Yes,
same boat.
normalizes it. I hate the
and
word normalize, by the way,
I
but that
know.
yeah, but that
But it's
makes
hard
it
to see.
acceptable.
Yeah, it's hard to see that something is wrong when you're looking around the room and you're like, "Well, I guess this is just
This
how
is
it
just how
is
it
because
is.
'cause
Yeah.
we're all doing this."
And her friend Anne, who was one of his girlfriends, I think the
Right.
only reason she was one of his girlfriends and not someone like Elizabeth is because she had some fame. So she had a little clout.
Mm,
Ah,
So he couldn't
mm.
just necessarily, like,
yeah.
drop
So
her, right?
he's married, he has a girlfriend,
At
and
least one.
he's obsessing over other young girls.
Correct.
He
Any
seems great.
He's a
yeah,
monster.
he is a pillar of society, just a real
Yep,
pillar.
yep.
Oh god.
Yeah, just a joy. So
Ugh.
So, December 6th, 1947 is one of the times that she left Mark Hansen's house. So she abruptly left this house and moved to San Diego, which is south, and I heard a beautiful place, where she roomed with the French family. So the daughter of
Wait,
this family, yeah, go ahead.
okay, so she abruptly
Yeah.
left.
She was like, "I'm
That's
out."
that's documented, right?
Yes.
So why? Why did she abruptly
That's
leave?
not
Why is
documented.
we
So
don't know
when the
that,
police
right?
ask all these questions, like, it's like they didn't follow up. The people were just like, "Yeah, she left abruptly."
Okay,
Why? I
okay,
don't know.
great. That doesn't seem like that's gonna go anywhere. Okay, let's move on. Yes,
Let's move
great.
on. Yeah.
Good
So,
policing work.
yeah, the daughter of this family, her name's Dorothy. She saw Elizabeth asleep in a movie theater that she was working at and kind of woke her up and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" She said she just
Aw.
got off the bus from Hollywood, and Dorothy felt bad for her, so she said, "You can come and stay with us." So, it was Dorothy, her mother, Elvira, and her brother. So, while in San Diego, she would go out on the town with different men, different servicemen, a lot of service
Hmm.
but she really didn't seem to be bringing home any money, and she kind of overstayed her welcome a little bit, but they were really nice and didn't wanna, like, kick her out. Again, she's the type of person you just feel bad, you wanna help her. So these are good people that wanna help her.
Right, right,
And
right.
so that's
Thank
kind of why I
God.
was saying that earlier,
So,
like, I feels like she has that aura of, like, "I wanna help you."
yeah,
So
does she have the aura of, and I'm not, oh my gosh, I'm not victim blaming. I'm just
no, I
trying to
know.
figure out, like, some of the mentality. Well, she has the potential bipolar,
Bipolar,
but I'm
yeah.
trying to figure out, does she have that kind of, not victim, but like a of I need someone to come in and save me.
Maybe.
You're
I know
big
what
and
you're
strong. Will you do it? And that's why she's not making money. She's actually just out there looking for people to save her from like moment to moment to moment. And
Maybe.
it's
yeah. I know what you're saying, Olivia,
Yeah, so do
because
I.
I'm not gonna say this as well as I want to, but there
Mhm.
is something to the the victim cycle and the
Yeah.
psychology of that trauma when you have been through something terrible. And it's like it's one of those horrible statistics, and I'll mess it up, but essentially, if you have been the victim of sexual assault, you are much more likely to be re-victimized
Yes.
Mhm.
again
Right,
than the average person is to be victimized in the first place,
right.
Right.
because it is part of that trauma cycle. And not to say that like it's your fault or you deserve it,
No, no,
but
no. Yeah.
essentially you are in a mindset and are then, unwittingly putting yourself back into situations or into relationships where you
Yes.
are more vulnerable to be
Right.
preyed upon again.
'Cause it's
It's
almost like
true.
you go towards what you know, even if it's dangerous. I also learned that same
Yeah.
thing, actually, from Olivia Benson. So
Yes,
it's
Olivia, our queen.
Law and Order, SVU. Yep.
Yes, our queen Olivia Benson. But,
Yep.
and that's true. It's a cycle, and until you break the cycle,
yeah.
you're
Mhm.
gonna repeat it.
So it's like
And
she's
it
stuck in this cycle. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
that she's actually prostituting herself for
No.
a
No,
living.
Right.
It's or,
intentionally.
being a
Yeah.
sex
Correct.
worker intentionally. I think it's more of a and I think maybe that explains the military thing because they are strong alpha
Well,
males,
and
and
her
she's going
father was
to
in the military. Not when
oh,
she
Mhm.
knew him, but he was at one
but
point, so I'm
still,
sure
so
it was
he had
talked
that
about.
vibe. Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, and I think there's a sense too of like, and certainly of this era, but like I will find a, quote, strong man
Yep.
to take care of me and to protect me,
Mhm.
to be a financial resource, but also like
Yep.
again with all these like, these mob people, like literal physical protection that has
Yes.
to be
Yes.
alluring to some degree. But again, just to not have the vocabulary for that, certainly to not have any sort of familial support, like we were saying,
Mhm.
and certainly, I mean, like therapy. I mean, come on,
And
like, and this was not even on the table at
Right.
that point
and
for
this is
her.
all
Like,
happening, like you said, all this stuff goes down when she's 22, right? Like,
Yeah.
she dies when
yeah,
she's 22.
your
So
Yeah,
frontal lobe is
globe
not
is
done
not
2024.
forming.
still
It's not
right.
formed.
She's a baby. She's still a that's what I was gonna say. Her frontal
Yeah,
lobe is not developed. She is
A senior in
not
college, if she'd gone to college,
she
like,
is not
correct.
equipped to be making these decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So, on January 6th, 1947, so we're getting closer to the actual crime now.
mm-mm.
The
Okay.
Frenches said that two men and a woman showed up at their door looking for Elizabeth.
Uh-oh.
She was very nervous, Elizabeth was, and refused to open the door.
Mm.
Then became extremely anxious to leave San Diego. She's like, gotta go, gotta
Huh.
go, gotta go. So that was January 6th. On January 8th, she called Mark Hansen asking for his help to get out of San Diego. He
Uh-oh.
declined,
Hmm.
or he said he couldn't, or whatever. Now, Mark also has connections to the mob because the mob's got connections everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
So she asked,
Allegedly.
yeah, allegedly. She
Allegedly.
asked an acquaintance, Robert Red is his nickname, Manning, to drive her to LA. He said, okay, but I can leave the morning of January 9th. So, how did she know this Red character? He was on a business trip to San Diego and he, you know, noticed her, taken in by her beauty. He pulled
Was he at the
over
bar? Did he meet her
and he
at
asked
where she
her
was
out.
a
No, he was
patron?
in his car and she was like
Oh, what?
standing outside. Yeah. And he pulls
Wait,
over and he asks
I'm
her out.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. She's
Yeah.
just walking down the
She's
street,
walking down the fucking
living her
street.
life. He is in a moving vehicle,
Listen.
sees her, and is like, "I'd hit that,"
Oh
and
my God.
stops and talks to her?
Yes. So Red saw her. Oh, right. Out in the wild. We were like, that's bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so he pulled over in his car and asked her out. Now, Red was married.
Hang on a minute.
Red was married. Now wait, there's more. So
It gets worse.
yes,
His
it
child
really
was in the
does.
backseat of the car.
With a wife that had just given birth to their baby.
I don't
Okay. So Red
I
is
hate
actually
it.
quoted as saying, like to the police, that he asked Elizabeth out to test if he truly loved his wife or not.
Wait,
Okay,
wait, no, wait,
when
what? He's like, "Let me see how much I love my wife. I'm gonna ask this
Yeah.
stranger out from my vehicle, and then if she what is this, like, if she says yes, that means I don't love my like,
no,
what is
no,
this
or
logic?"
is it I'm gonna go have sex with someone
Yes.
and see how it feels to
See how it
decide if
feels.
I actually
Right.
love my wife that I just,
Had a baby with.
had a baby
She's like
with.
recovering. They had been
She just
married for I think 15 months.
pushed something the size of a watermelon out of something the size of a
And
peanut.
she's not allowed to have sex for like 6 months or something. I don't know, I don't have kids, but,
I don't have
like,
It's
kids
for a
either,
it's
but,
long
8 weeks
time.
usually,
8
but
weeks,
still,
okay.
like, if
Yeah.
all goes well.
um,
Oh,
what the f
yeah.
okay, so when we talk about the
Ashley's falling
when
back in
we
her chair. We're so
Ashley just
bad.
had a mild
Great.
seizure.
Yeah.
When we talk about the patriarchy needing to be dismantled,
We
this
say
is
fuck the
what we're talking
patriarchy. It's
about.
this.
We're not
Yes,
talking
that's it.
about like, okay, this episode is obviously very triggering for all of us because
Yes.
it's like the epitome of what can go horribly wrong for a young woman who is unawares,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Step after
exactly.
step after step. But
We're
and
not
I
But
talking
feel
yeah,
like
about we're not talking
we're
about good men. We're
no, no,
not
no,
right.
talking
and
about
there are, of course, more
Yes.
good men than not out there. There are so many bad men that we've all had these encounters along the
Correct.
way. I told you guys about my Ulta situation, the guy that was,
Yes.
like, following me
yes.
around the store
Well,
jacking off, like,
and
disgusting.
I
So
and
Amen.
Ashley had one too. I haven't
yeah,
had that situation, thank
At a
God, but
Starbucks. I had a
at a
guy
so
Starbucks.
gross.
jacking off in front of me at a
Right.
Starbucks,
And
friends. Like,
this is what we're talking about with the fact that that society is built in such a way that women can be looked at as just an object
Mhm.
for the momentary pleasure, and we're just expected to just deal with it.
Yeah.
And
and
it's just
also
part of our
it
daily life. Like we have had to build our habits and to around this structure in
Yeah.
order to feel safe and to
Yeah.
and
avoid unwanted
Anything. Yeah.
inference.
and the
Yeah.
fear that if you do, refuse or push back too
Or
strongly,
just
that
goddamn it, stand up for yourself.
or just stand up for yourself or just
Yeah.
say even saying no thank you can sometimes put you in physical danger,
Yeah.
which has also I think happened to all of us and certainly
Yep.
happened to like many friends and people I know. Just a polite rejection
Mhm.
can set some of these people off, and it's like
Be like, "Oh,
especially
bitch." And it's like, "What?"
yeah,
Even
or
though
just like
no is a complete sentence.
no is
Yes.
a complete sentence, but yeah, Olivia, it's one of those things where, it's like we wish this wasn't the case. We wish this didn't happen, but unfortunately, it's the Me Too movement. Like it
Yeah.
has happened to every single woman
Every
listening to
single
this
woman has
has
had
Yeah.
some encounter.
experienced some version of this, unfortunately, probably more than once.
Yep.
And there are, I think these quote bad men, they do, the good men outnumber the bad, surely, but at the same time, the bad are so like there's such a profusion of
They
their
are.
behavior. It's like you think about like if you have like one bad man and every day he's accosting a different woman, like you would have multiple
That's a
people
lot.
Yeah. It's a
you
lot.
can have multiple people who are just constantly, being like bombarded by like bad behavior. And all it takes is like one idiot in your neighborhood, like, screaming from his truck to,
Yeah.
really put a
Ruin your
damper on your
day.
day. Yeah.
And what's in the news right now is the whole Diddy thing,
Yep.
the P Diddy, and think about the syndicate that has been running around him in the
Yeah.
underground for decades, and how
Who
many
knows if it
women
ever stopped?
and how many women and men,
Yeah.
it seems like, have been absolutely,
Because
completely abused
yes.
because of him and his cohort, you know?
And because so many
Absolutely.
of these men are sociopaths or psychopaths and they are in positions of power. So
Power.
then they have people around them that will do anything they want
Right.
because they also want
They want
power.
the power.
So that's why we hear about them. That's why well, obviously it's a true crime podcast, so we're going to hear about terrible things. But
Right.
that's why we hear about them so much. We don't hear about the good ones because the bad ones are in power. And it's so
And
fucking
yeah.
frustrating. That's all.
And at the same time, like you made an interesting point too, Jen, like, men being in, positions of power, but also I think like the physical aggression and the physical power of it too.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, just I am all about being a like a strong, powerful
Yes.
woman, and at the end of the day, most men, like I'm 5'5", like you're just even if you are my
We're
same
all
size,
tiny. Yeah, I'm
you are
5'5".
just you're
I'm
just
five
stronger
four.
than me.
I'm actually
Like
five
you
three and a
just
half, but I
You're
say I'm five
yes.
four.
She's a
Look at
little
my
we'll
resume.
protect you.
yeah, but it's like you are probably stronger than me, and it's probably
Yeah,
like you don't have to be the rock to, make
Mhm.
me, feel unsafe
intimidated.
physically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about it before. A man's greatest fear is that they'll be laughed at, and a woman's greatest fear is that they will be murdered.
murdered.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
like you said, this history, right, this story right here is like a step by step, the worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey friends, Jen here, and we hope you're enjoying this episode of Life Upon the Wicked Stage. Just a few quick reminders. If you're looking for any of the visuals that we've mentioned in this or any episode of the podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Wicked Stage Pod or Facebook at Life Upon the Wicked Stage. If you want more, please join our Patreon by searching the Wicked Stage Podcast. There you'll find ad-free episodes, videos of our recordings, mini-sodes, behind-the-scenes content, giveaways, and so much more. And the most important side note, if you like the show, please give us a nice rating wherever you listen. It sounds silly, but it's still the best way to get the word out and support us in this crazy podcast world. Well, lights are blinking, intermission's over, so grab those snacks and another drink and enjoy the rest of the show.
Okay, so we're with Red has asked her out.
Oh,
If
Red
he
has
loves
asked
his
her
wife.
out to find out if he loves his wife or not. Yes.
Right,
So clearly he didn't love his wife because,
right.
I'm gonna
Um,
go on Love is Blind to see if I love my wife or not.
correct.
Sorry.
TM, TM. All right. So anyway, trademark. Um, although he first confessed he only saw Elizabeth once on December 16th.
Oh, so she
Or,
responded like she was like,
yeah,
okay.
but I don't know if we don't know if he told her
Well, also,
that he
again,
was
she's looking for
married.
someone to save her.
Yeah,
Is,
I'm
is-
sure he left that detail out.
He
Like,
may have left that detail out, or I'm leaving her, or I'll take care of you, honey. Like, whatever. There
it's
are so
giving
many
Scott
things that are said,
Peterson.
right? Yes. Oh,
There's another
poor
one.
April.
Anyway, all right. Okay,
But
okay.
according to the French family, even though Red said he only saw her on one time on December 16th, he actually picked her up from their house every night from the 16th to the 21st. So the entire time he was in San Diego in December. Now, he also claimed that they only like kissed and fooled around a little. Yeah, sure, Jan. Like, sure, that's what happened. So
It was a
on it was
situationship?
a
It was a
situationship
situation ship.
that was never going to amount to anything else because he was married with a child.
Yep.
And his poor sweet wife, eventually Red is questioned, and his poor sweet wife is like, "Well, I'm sure he could do nothing wrong." And I'm like, "Oh, you poor woman.
Well,
What?
she's just a home vulnerable
She's
with a
just home,
fresh
vulnerable with
baby.
a fresh
Like,
baby who has
She
no clue
probably
because he lies to her all the time."
she
I
probably
hate
has
it.
postpartum too. So
And that too, right? So,
yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
she loads her bags into Red's car and off they go. So she did write her mother, and she wrote her mother like every week. So she wrote her mother on January 8th saying a man named Red would be driving her back to LA and that she had been offered a role in the Florentine Garden Show, which
Okay.
we had done, as we said, her friend Anne,
That's the burlesque
the
show.
burlesque show. Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Um, on January 9th, she arrived in LA and checked some bags at the Greyhound station. So that's interesting. She went to the Greyhound station, checked some bags. Then she told Red that she was meeting her sister at the Biltmore Hotel. So
The
he stuck
Biltmore.
around the Biltmore, not the Biltmore in Asheville, but like the Biltmore
Different
Hotel.
different
Different
one.
Biltmore,
Right.
still as grand and as extravagant. I think it cost like $9 million to build in that time money.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's still there. We can stay there when we go on our trip. So it is said that he did stick around for a few hours. He said that, what a gentleman, sticking around, making sure she's okay. But
Meanwhile, his wife is at home with a screaming
uh-huh,
baby. But yeah, continue.
whatever, but what a gentleman. At 6:30 p.m., he said he left the hotel and Elizabeth was still there waiting.
For her
So for
quote
her sister,
sister.
but in truth, none of Elizabeth's sisters were in LA. So
I was
Okay.
just gonna say, I was like, sister air quotes.
she was probably just using him for a ride. But you know what? He's an asshole, so use him away. Like that's fine. Like
Yeah,
you
go
need to
back
get
to your
out of
wife,
Well, that's
Red.
go
what
back
it
to your
was.
wife, Red.
Food and shelter and
Mhm,
entertainment
mhm,
and
uh-huh.
transportation. That's what she's using these men
Yeah.
to provide because she doesn't have it. Okay.
Yeah, and the
Good.
last person that was, like, taking care of her was Mark Hansen, and he said no. So she
Right.
had to get out of there somehow. She was terrified for some
Limited
reason.
choices. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
Biltmore employees remember seeing her at the hotel. She was making phone calls from the lobby. She made like 2 or 3 phone calls, and the bathroom attendant said he actually saw her applying that wax to her teeth.
Huh.
So, yeah,
Does that mean
Uh,
she was preparing to see someone
that's what you would
of
assume. Yes.
Potentially,
of
yeah.
Mhm.
importance or something? Okay.
Yes. So at approximately 10 p.m., she walked out of the Olive Street door and, after waiting about 3.5 hours at the hotel.
Wow.
Huh.
The foreman said he saw her walking towards 6th Street. See, I don't know what this means. I don't have any geography, but anyone that lives in LA understands what that means.
Okay.
She was wearing a black tailored suit and black suede heels. So,
Okay. Dressy.
as she was dressy,
So,
1940s,
yeah,
looking sharp.
some of her belongings are at the Greyhound station.
Uh-huh. And
Some of
there
her
is
belongings are at the Biltmore.
no.
Or no?
She has like her purse with her and
Oh,
that's
and
it.
that's it. Okay,
There's
So
okay.
she
also
wasn't planning to, like, check into the
stay.
Biltmore.
Correct.
Yeah.
She was just meeting her sister, quote
Oh,
unquote.
I
sister.
couldn't
There.
afford the Biltmore, but I know this.
Correct.
I know this from watching old movies. This is very much a thing of like sort of checking your bags essentially in
Mhm.
a locker
Mhm.
at a train station. That
Yes.
was very much a thing.
Yeah, she had one there and she also had a trunk somewhere else, and that comes into play a little later
Okay.
too.
Now, Jen, do we
Cool.
know who she called from the Biltmore?
No. They
Mm.
just
No.
say she made a couple calls.
So the cops are like, "That probably won't lead anywhere either. We'll just
Right.
not look that
Now
up."
her sisters did say, "Hey, I wasn't in LA and I wasn't planning on coming to LA," and she didn't call us. So,
So this was either a ruse or a friend, maybe.
uh-huh. So she leaves the Biltmore. She walks a few blocks down to the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge, where witnesses say she stopped in apparently looking for someone. And now this is, by most accounts, the last place she was seen on January 9th, 1947.
So this is like 10 something at night.
Mhm. It
Huh.
looks like she's looking for somebody, and that's the last
So
time
we don't know where
supposedly
she
anybody sees
was.
her.
We don't know where she was between like 6th Street
Right.
sighting and later
And
that night.
there. Correct. Now, the murder doesn't happen or she isn't found until January 15th. So there are some days to account for. So according to former LAPD officer Steve Hodel, which just remember this name, we'll get
Hodel,
into it.
Hodel, Hodel.
Hodel, we'll get into it later next week.
She means you
There
remember it, Ashley, because it's very obvious I'm not going to remember it.
Um, but according to this gentleman, there are witnesses that saw her between January 19th and January 14th. But he's a former officer from like now, not 1947, now. And there are reasons
What?
that I
Okay.
think he says this. And I
So
just want to, we'll wait to get into it a little bit. He wrote a book.
Jen, this is something I do know in my broad
Mhm.
strokes
Oh,
that
yeah.
she was effectively like missing from the time she was like
Yes.
last seen
Yes.
verified, definitely alive to the time her body is discovered.
Correct.
It's like a full week. And this has
Correct.
been disputed that there are
Uh
people
huh.
who are like, oh, yeah, I saw her, but
Uh
none
huh.
of it was really verifiable, or some of it was subject to like speculation, but it
Right.
was like confirmed alive here, dead here,
Yes.
maybe, maybe not, seen in the middle.
Right. So this in the middle time, right? There
Uh-huh.
was supposedly someone that saw her who was an LAPD officer. Her name was Meryl McBride, but this didn't come out until like way after.
Yeah,
A lady officer.
A lady officer. Yeah.
but also was she owned by the mob too? Was she just saying that she saw her to make like
Who
up a
knows?
fake timeline?
Well, here's my thing. So, okay. So Meryl McBride said that she saw her on January 14th, 1947, important date, January 14th,
Okay.
around
Okay.
3:30 p.m. She said Elizabeth came running up to her hysterical about an ex-suitor who was threatening to kill her.
Oh,
Whoa.
She
okay.
calmed Elizabeth down. Go ahead.
Or did she? Like, is
Right.
this planting to like direct the investigation in another direction?
So here's why I am suspect of this.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm speculating wildly now. So she calmed Elizabeth down, and Elizabeth said, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. So she left. But all of this came to light after the murder. So, like, the police sent out a bulletin that was like, anybody that has any information on Elizabeth Short,
Yeah.
many, many, like days,
What
weeks
once the
after the
body's
murder.
discovered and they know who this
Correct.
is. Yeah,
But
she's been
Meryl was
identified
an LAPD officer, so she should have known right when that
right
murder
away.
happened. So why didn't she come forward then, and why did she wait until the bulletin came out? Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
And so
And
Yeah.
this information wasn't gathered until Steve Hodel, from my understanding, had an interview with her when she was, like, 80.
Oh,
I think.
um,
Now, I could be wrong. I could have interpreted that differently. But, yeah, so
seems
this
like a
is
bit of a reach.
it
A bit
feels
of a
like a
reach.
reach to me. I could be totally wrong. She may
yeah,
have come forward beforehand, but still, she was an officer, and this case was so big. There is no way an
Yeah,
LAPD officer didn't know that it happened the day that it happened, if not the day after, and it
absolutely.
mhm.
wouldn't have been, like, a week after that she came forward, right?
Right.
That's what I think. However,
Yeah, it seems
she conf
unlikely.
it seems likely to me too. She confirms that she saw Elizabeth leave another bar on January 14th with 2 men and 1 woman, which is interesting since 2 men and a woman came to
The French
Wait.
house.
the French
And
house.
then so she left the bar with 2 men and 1 woman and then ran up to the officer and said, "My ex-suitor threatened
No,
to kill me?"
no,
Okay.
she ran up to the officer, said, "My ex threatened to kill me." The officer calmed her down. Elizabeth said, "I'm fine." So the officer said a half an hour later she saw
Oh,
her
got
leaving.
it.
Sorry, I didn't
Got
say
it.
a half an hour later. So
Got
Got
it.
it.
it
With
seems a little
2
suspect to me, but it is also interesting that 2
2
men and
men
a
and a woman.
woman. So again, there are all of these things and who was corrupt and who wasn't and who was on the
Right.
payroll and who wasn't. It's a lot of stuff. So we are now going to get into the murder. So I'm going to go ahead and give a trigger
This is
warning because this
so
is
gruesome. It's so
it's
gruesome.
so gruesome. There's a lot of gore here. Now I would
Yep.
say maybe I wouldn't say it, but the way this was done,
Yeah.
it's important
No,
because
It
it
is
is.
important.
it it's just important. So
It's very something.
It's
I'm gonna do my
it
best to get through quickly, but if you are readers,
no,
dear
it's
readers, have I watched Bridgerton
Readers.
lately? Maybe. Dear listeners, if you don't wanna listen to this, that's totally fine. Just, like, skip
yep.
ahead, like, 5 to 10 minutes
Um,
if you want to. Around 10 a.m. on the morning of January 15th, 1947, Betty Bersinger was taking a walk pushing her infant daughter in a stroller when they saw what she
God.
thought was a mannequin
Yeah.
laying in a vacant lot on South Norton Avenue, halfway between West 39th and Coliseum Streets. But a closer look revealed the true horror of this crime scene. Not
Ugh.
a mannequin, but the pale, naked body of a young woman sliced in two, dark hair in stark contrast to her exposed, mutilated body. Bersinger rushed off to find a telephone at a nearby home and called the police. Los Angeles Herald Express reporter Aggie Underwood was among the first to arrive and took several photos of the corpse and the crime scene. And we're going to get back to Aggie, other than the fact that she's a woman in a very male dominated field at the time. There's some very interesting stuff that happens with her a little later, but we'll do that next week. The 22-year-old at the moment, Jane Doe, but we of course know her as Elizabeth Short, had been completely severed at the waist and drained of blood. The body had apparently been washed by the killer. The lower half of her body was positioned about a foot away from the upper, and her intestines had been tucked behind her buttocks.
Hmm.
The corpse had been posed with her hands over her head, her elbows bent at right angles, and her legs were spread apart.
Like
Her
a
right,
almost like a
like,
centerfold
yeah,
pose.
So
yes,
she's definitely staged.
absolutely staged and posed. Yes.
Hmm.
Her right breast had been virtually cut off.
Hmm.
Her left breast had a laceration through the nipple that was extremely deep, but the right breast was almost totally gone. There
Hmm.
was a rectangular chunk of flesh missing from her upper thigh, and the most gruesome and chilling mutilation of all, her face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating an effect known as the Glasgow smile. It's known as this because they think that the practice was originated in Glasgow, Scotland in the
Yep.
20s and 30s.
This is one of my
Is this
horrifying
your
cases. Well,
Yes, tell me.
this is one of
She's
my horror.
back.
Yeah,
You
this is
left for
one.
a second, listeners. Olivia disappeared, but she's back.
This is one of two horrifying pieces of medical
Mhm.
things that I looked at slash know about this. So I also looked at this too, Jen,
Mhm.
about like the Glasgow Smile. What is
Yeah.
this? Also think Joker, like
Yes, the Joker, absolutely, that's it.
yeah,
I
yeah. This
mean,
is Heath
But like
Ledger's Joker.
the Heath Ledger Joker, not
Correct.
the
Heath Ledger Joker for
right.
sure. But also it's funny because if anyone has recently watched that show on Netflix, The Perfect Couple,
mhm.
not a spoiler, but there is a character who is within the show, shall we say, and who is harassing Nicole Kidman throughout.
Oh,
And
yeah!
yeah, that actor, he has scars on the side of his face. I thought it was makeup for the show because I wasn't familiar with the actor.
Yeah.
And when I was looking up, like just like Wikipedia, a Glasgow Smile, he has one. He is listed as someone who is a survivor
Oh
of
my
receiving.
god.
Yeah, so this is
Well, I need
something.
you guys to tell me about the Glasgow Smile because I don't know about
Okay.
this.
So I've got the Wikipedia entry pulled up here, but it is also called the Chelsea Grin,
Tell her I'll be
Glasgow.
right back.
Yeah, so it is a wound that's typically caused by making a cut from the corner of the
Right,
mouth
to the
all the
ear.
way to the ear. So it's like basically like
But
elongating your smile, also like the horror movie smile.
right, right,
But
right.
it's because like Jen said, the practice was said to have originated in Glasgow, Scotland in the 1920s and 30s. It's usually performed with like a utility knife or sometimes like a piece of broken glass. So it's one of those things where it's an extremely it's usually like a gang or mob related injury. This actor, his name is Tommy Flanagan,
He's
and
so good.
he was
Oh my
attacked
goodness.
out just at randomly attacked outside a bar in Glasgow.
Oh,
It doesn't give specifics as to like was it like a wrong place, wrong time situation? Like he was, it sounds like he was jumped and like not necessarily that he was in a gang per se. But he is obviously alive and well and acting. It looks like he was cut, but maybe like it didn't go all the way through. Whereas there are people who it's like it's cutting all the way through. And in Elizabeth Short's case, like with blood loss or with other things in shock, like it can be fatal, but not
oof,
necessarily.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty, again, Heath Ledger Joker, like it's a pretty grievous
yeah.
injury, but depending on the scale of it and how fast like you're getting medical attention, but it's pretty grisly. But that is one of my two pieces of chilling medical knowledge.
That.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So, about a dozen patrol officers, sergeants, command officers, and detectives descended upon the scene, in addition to numerous reporters and photographers. And to say the scene wasn't secured is an understatement.
Okay.
So the competitive newspapers were swarming to get pictures, and the cops were trying to fend them off, trying to do their own investigation. But like throughout the crime scene, there were cigarette butts just discarded. There were the bulbs from the cameras. What are they called?
Oh
Flash
my
bulbs.
gosh, just
The
like
flash
left
bulbs just
there.
like thrown about, right? Bystanders were just looking, which they should. I mean, it's such a gruesome crime scene, and bystanders are just like, oh, hey, what's that over there?
You like, I don't know, put up a tent, like do
Well, that's why they
something.
covered her with a
A
sheet.
sheet,
Which
right.
they also say now that we know, I mean, again, this wasn't as much of an option then, but
Yeah.
forensically, that's terrible to
It's
do
terrible,
because
Now
exactly.
there's
it
fibers on her
ruins
that they can't tell where the fibers came from, but
Exactly, I
ruins
said
evidence.
even though they covered her for, like, modesty, thank you for the victim, but it compromises the entire integrity of the crime scene as we know now. They didn't know that back then,
um,
so, I mean, if you know, do better, but still.
yeah,
Oof, yeah.
Yeah. So,
so, yeah,
since the body had already been washed clean, LAPD detectives concluded that she must have been killed somewhere else before being dumped
right.
in this vacant lot.
And again, like you said, she was drained of blood. I'm
Drained
assuming
of blood.
she's
Because
not sitting in a pool of
the
blood,
photos,
so
There
there's
is
yeah.
not blood
nothing.
around her. It's very strange.
No blood. It's that's why they thought she was a mannequin. I mean, she's
Right,
literally and you didn't
right.
Ugh.
see some of her internal organs were removed. The intestines were just tucked, as I said.
Yep.
So, yeah, she looked like a mannequin until you got closer. Near her body, detectives noted a heel print and they found a cement sack with traces of watered down blood that presumably had been used to transport her body to the vacant lot. They think that it
Mm.
transported her lower half.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
the indentations on the cement sack made it look like two people carried it.
Mm.
Huh, how can you tell that from a sack?
I think just and I think it's like that's definitely circumstantial evidence. Like, I don't
Right,
think you
right,
can
Yeah.
right, right.
tell completely, but it looked like 2
It
people,
was,
like it
like,
was at both ends
pinched
or
on
something,
either
yeah.
side. Huh.
There was also a watch found at the scene, and because it wasn't weathered at all, they think that it may have been left by the killer, but they don't know for sure.
Ooh.
Lost your watch maybe while you were, like, taking things out
Disposing
of
of the
bags.
body.
What's in your
Uh-huh.
body?
So during the autopsy, it was discovered that Short was cut at the only spot where the body can be severed in half without breaking bone. It was a surgical technique taught in the 1930s called a hemicorporectomy.
Yes! This is my piece
Is
of
this your piece? Go.
this is my crazy piece of knowledge. Yeah. So I came across this exact same thing, Jen, but the horrifying part of this that I was like, huh, because I knew again in my broad strokes about Black Dahlia, like she was
Right.
discovered, she was like cut in half, dismembered. Oh my God. But then when I was like looking more into this particular medical procedure, this was something that they had actually pioneered like for the first time. This was not just like the clinical name for when you're cut in half. This was a
Right.
medical procedure
Right.
that they pioneered in the 1930s.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Why?
why?
Okay, yeah, that's
Correct.
the
Thank
question.
you, Olivia.
Why?
Okay. Horrifying
Why would
medical
you do
knowledge.
Yeah.
So now I've gone down this road. So I was like, I've got to share this on the pod because this is too much. So this is something that I didn't even know this was an option in the medical field, but I guess this is something that can be done for a variety of reasons. In medical uses, it's really only performed like it's super rare. Like
Mhm.
Okay,
it's super rare to even like try to do this,
okay.
and B, it's super rare to survive having this
You
done
can
because
survive?
I
oh,
didn't
oh,
know that.
oh yes. Just wait. Again, horrifying medical information.
What the
So,
fuck?
this is something where they will do this if you essentially have some horrific injury to like your lower body where
Lower
essentially like
half.
your pelvis is like completely shattered, and like your reproductive organs and your bladder and everything else and like your like large intestine is all compromised. So it's sort of like, hey, you really can't like live or have quality of life with this level of damage to your lower extremities. We can try this procedure as a means of like saving your life essentially, but it has I won't get into the details of the procedure because A, it's grisly, and B, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But it's interesting because what I did come across was they will not even try this unless the patient, they've said specifically, is someone who they feel is has the mental health to overcome and to work through the life they would have post surgery.
So,
So
oh my
if they
god.
don't feel you are mentally
Right.
strong enough to
Forget it.
handle this, they won't even recommend this to you because it's almost like,
Wow.
I mean, it's like the most extreme form of amputation because
Right.
it's taking all of your sex organs, it's taking all of your, also you have to have a colostomy. So basically you have to have a bag to pee and poop on the outside of you because that's all going to be
That's
gone
all
too
right.
because of where this incision has to happen.
W
So in 1989, there is a documented case of a
Fuck.
woman who she sustained this. She was struck by a train,
Okay.
and
So, like,
somehow
massive internal
she
injuries.
she
Right.
arrived at the hospital and was somehow fully conscious, was aware of her injury, and said she wished to be treated. So she was
Wow.
stabilized, she underwent the surgery, she ultimately did not survive because she got an infection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, and this is the craziest part of all of this, there is an American man who had this surgery in 2019
Oh my god.
following a forklift accident.
Oh my god.
Ugh.
He is alive. He and his wife have a YouTube channel where they talk about his new lifestyle without the lower half of his body.
Oh my god. I absolutely thought this was, like, finished in
I
the
did too,
1930s.
Jen.
I didn't think
I
this
did
was a
too.
thing. The way they
No,
talked about it was like, it's archaic, it doesn't happen anymore.
this can still happen. 2019, there's this man, I think his name is, I'll butcher the pronunciation, Lauren Showers, Schauers,
Yeah.
American,
Lauren, slide in our yeah.
2019.
Oh my god.
So It's one of those things, again, it's incredibly rare. I don't have
Wow.
I have the number of, like, people who've even super small numbers of people who've ever undergone the surgery, let alone survived. Again, just because of, like, how radical
Yeah.
it is, how, like, mentally and emotionally traumatic this is. Like, so many people just don't survive because of, like, infections and all these other
Right.
issues with it. But yeah, so Jen, I saw this, was like, "Oh, this is like some sort of like 1930s barbarism. I'm sure they
That's what I
abandoned this
thought.
immediately."
So
Nope.
I have a
This
question.
is
I have
Wow.
to ask this question. I have to ask this question. So, because of the photos I've seen, it looks like
Yes.
they would have severed her spine. It looks like it's under the
Yes.
Okay.
ribs straight through. Is
So
that not what happens? You don't
no,
sever
it
the
is.
spine?
So what it
Yep.
is, it was the lower half of her body had been removed by transecting the lumbar spine
Okay.
between the
Okay.
second and third vertebrae.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what it was taught. It's the
Okay.
only way to not
Okay.
cut that bone. So yeah, you're correct.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but going back to what you were saying, Jen, about, but between this grisly detail, but also my horrifying piece of medical
Yeah.
information, it's it's one thing to be like, we sawed you in half, but the fact that this was this, what, 12-year-old medical procedure,
Yeah.
and somebody was like, "Oh, I just happen to know," because like there wasn't Wikipedia then, but they just happened to know exactly where and how to cut this person in half. Because, and I was recently rewatching like The Jinx about like Robert Durst,
Yes.
Oh,
who
yeah.
famously
And Robert
dismembered one of
Durst.
his victims. But
One of them.
Oof.
typically with dismemberment cases, what happens is the torso, because it is so difficult to deal with,
And
the
it's
torso
heavy.
usually
Yeah.
remains intact,
Yeah,
and you
Dan
end up with like,
Wozniak's left it in a theater.
right, you end up like head, arms, legs end up being
Yes.
amputated, but the torsos are usually intact. So like this is also really unusual because they knew how, and they also bothered to do it. Like,
Yeah.
Right?
wild.
Well, and that's one of the biggest things, and I mean, we'll get to that, but detectives were like, "This is someone with surgical knowledge. It has
It
to be
has to
some
be.
sort
Oh,
of."
it
Has
has
to
to be
be.
In
either
fact,
someone with surgical knowledge killed her and did this, or they had a surgeon in their pocket who they then brought her body to and
correct.
said, "Do this thing. We want this done."
Yes. I mean, to the point that the police even started to, like, question medical students.
Yeah,
Like, they were so desperate to find out who did
find
this, yeah.
somebody.
Because
Yeah.
also, and again, with dismemberment cases, usually the dismemberment is to better help hide or transport the
Right.
body.
This was
And in this
making a statement.
instance, right,
Oh,
exactly,
Yeah.
Olivia, they were like,
yeah,
no, we want to pose her. We're going to put her in plain sight. This is
and
just
I
for
Yep.
shock
this was
value.
for
Absolutely, it's a
somebody
scene, yeah.
this was for somebody to see it and to get a really specific message, and I think
Yeah.
part of deciphering who did this is what was the message that was trying to be broadcast and to
Correct.
who.
And to
Absolutely.
who? Exactly.
Ugh.
So I know,
So
it's so her lower body was cut in half between the second and third vertebrae.
okay.
Only a doctor would really know how to do this.
Right, right,
There
right.
were ligature marks on her ankles, her wrists, and her neck. There
Oh,
were superficial lacerations on her right forearm, her left upper arm, and the lower left side of her chest. Her genitals were mutilated and her anus was dilated, suggesting that she might have been raped. Samples were taken from her body
Oof.
for the presence of semen, but the results came back negative. So,
Hmm.
the victim's carved flesh and the hair had been forced inside her vagina. There is a report that her uterus was completely removed.
Huh.
The coroner believes that she had been kept in a bathtub with her hands tied above her head, which maybe is why she was posed in the way she was posed, because rigor mortis had
rigor
already set
mortis.
in. Also, secured by her feet and her neck.
Why a bathtub?
They didn't
Was
say.
like the angle or something
I
of like,
think the angle, and I also think because she was drained of blood, so they're like, "Where else would you do
hmm.
this but in a
Oh,
bathtub?"
right, right, right.
Right?
Hmm.
So, medical examiners determined that she had been dead for around 10 hours before the discovery, leaving her time of death either sometime during the evening of January 14th or the early morning hours of January 15th. Now, this is horrible. Here we go. This is the post and
This is worse?
pre-mortem things. I know, there's worse.
Okay.
So, the medical
Strap in,
examiner,
Olivia.
I
Yeah.
know, further reported that Short was likely to be alive when her killer attacked her.
Okay.
Reportedly, there was a bluish discoloration surrounding the Glasgow smile, which suggested that she was alive at the time. The victim had also sustained blows to her head and her face, one which probably caused hemorrhaging to her brain. So, this and the shock of having her face slashed from mouth to ear were the cause of her death, most probably.
So head trauma plus blood
The
loss
shock,
and
the shock. Like,
horrifying. Yeah.
the coroner literally said if she was alive, which we think she was when she had her mouth slit, the shock of that pain and the fact that that was even happening,
Yeah.
plus the
Ugh.
fact that her head was beaten,
Yeah.
caused her death. The other mutilations, thankfully, which is horrible to say, were
Right.
made postmortem.
Postmortem.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, because she was a Jane Doe at the time, the LAPD made a deal with the Los Angeles Examiner for exclusive rights to report her identity. And the LA Examiner used their sound photo machine, which is like an early fax machine, to send her prints to the FBI for identification. And Short's fingerprints turned up really quickly, like 56 minutes, actually, to be exact, because
Wow.
she had applied to be a clerk at the commissary at the U.S. Army's Camp Cook in California, and because
She'd
she
been
was
arrested.
arrested in Santa Barbara.
Because that mugshot.
That mugshot, and the FBI had her mugshot from that arrest, which they provided to the press. And the Examiner, first, as promised, got that, and that's what they ran. So before
Wow.
long, the media began reporting every salacious detail they could
About her.
about Elizabeth Short. Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, so we're gonna talk about the press more 100%,
Okay.
but as soon as her name was revealed, reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner telephoned Phoebe Short, her mother, who had not yet heard of her daughter's death,
God.
pretending that Elizabeth had won a beauty contest.
Stop
What?
it.
They pumped her mother for details, all of the details they could to find out who Elizabeth was before revealing the horrible truth that her daughter had been murdered. Absolute trash.
I
So yeah,
hate
they
these
call yeah,
people.
yeah,
What?
yep,
Oh my
that's
God.
100% what they did. Now they said
Who
they're
are those people?
I
Like,
have their names,
Ew.
but they said
ugh,
the editor told them to do it, and I mean, like, okay, do what
I
your
don't
boss says, but
care.
are you fucking
Like,
kidding me? If my boss
No.
says to call right?
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh,
oh
gross.
my
That's so
God.
gross.
Horrible. So, the only
Ugh.
leads the LAPD had at this time were a newsboy who said that around 6 a.m. he saw a Ford sedan with his
Ford?
headlights on. A black Ford sedan.
Black
Sorry, I
Ford
didn't
sedan.
say
That is a
black.
mafia car.
Uh-huh.
That's a mafia car.
Now, I mean, granted, a lot of people had black cars, but it was
But
the 40s. But specifically, a black
specifically,
Ford sedan with its headlights on around 6 a.m. in the spot where the body was found. A neighbor witnessed the same black Ford sedan as well, but at a different time. So, was the killer there more than once? Did they come back maybe for the watch? Did they have two trips maybe to dump the body? Don't know.
um, does the Glasgow smile
Uh-huh.
injury have a meaning
I don't
behind it?
think
Like,
so.
does it
I'll look
mean
that up.
you were gonna rat, so they cut your mouth? You know, like cut your
Well,
tongue out. Like, does it
okay.
have a meaning?
We'll get into it a little later. But
Okay.
the book that I read did say that this crime scene and the mutilation of Elizabeth's body was very much something that the mob would do.
Yeah.
And Bugsy Siegel in particular really liked to hit people in the head with the butt of his gun.
Gun.
Mm.
Mm.
So the head/facial
Yeah,
injuries maybe.
maybe.
And you
Oof.
know what I wonder well, we're saving speculation for next week.
Speculation for next week. So here we go. Because Olivia has to go eat delicious dinner, the press gets
You
involved.
know what? I don't know that I'm gonna, but go ahead.
After hearing this
After hearing
grisly
these grisly
story.
details. So if
Yeah.
you fast forwarded, friends, welcome back. The
Welcome
press
back.
gets involved. As the
Welcome back.
media learned more about Elizabeth Short's history, they began to brand her as a sexual deviant.
Right.
Why?
That's what I heard in the
Because she was a
documentary.
free woman in like the 1940s,
Yeah,
and
because of
it
of
sold
the B
papers.
girl the B girl thing
Yeah.
and the having numerous boyfriends. Yeah.
She was
Mhm.
arrested once.
Yes.
Like, must be a floozy.
Must be a floozy, right? And the
Ugh.
best kind. We love you. We love floozies.
We stand a
So
floozy.
One police
Mm.
report read the victim knew at least 50 men at the time of her death, and at least 25 men had been seen with her in the 60 days preceding her death. She was known as a teaser of men. Unquote.
A
This was in the
teaser,
It was
news.
in the news. It was in the police report. Sorry,
which
it was in a police
there's
report.
one thing about like sensationalizing her sex history, right? Her
Mhm.
sexual history, whatever. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Then by saying that she was a teaser of men, that is making this somehow her fault.
Her fault.
Yes.
They make her, yes, they make it
But
her fault.
can you imagine if, like, God forbid, like, I was murdered and they were like, Ashley had 300 men in her Facebook friends,
Right?
and therefore, like, what?
Ashley, first of all, we know I'm gonna be the one that's murdered because I light up
Stop
the
saying
fucking
that. I don't
room.
like it.
No one's getting murdered.
No
No
one's
one's
No
getting
one.
lighting
murdered.
up a room.
No.
But yeah,
It's
I know,
fine.
right?
But can you
Exactly.
imagine? I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so I knew some men. What the hell? Like, what does that even
Ashley
mean?
was
What does it
living
mean?
she was living with a man unmarried for
She was
several years.
22 years old. I mean,
It was
she
It
was
was like that
a
one it
kid.
was like that one time a relative got mad because I was living with a man and I was like, "He is gay." And she was like, "No one will understand." I was like, "He is a" She's like, "You
You know
can't
what?
live with a man." And I was like, "He is a
No one will
homosexual."
understand. I love
This was an
that.
God.
elderly person, but
I
still.
also had a gay
Still.
roommate, which was so much fun. Shout
I've
out
never
Ryan
had a
Dowder.
gay roommate. The press gave Elizabeth Short the nickname the Black Dahlia due to her reported preference for wearing a lot of sheer black clothing. It was just black clothing, but
Why
salacious, right?
Dahlia? Why Dahlia? Why the
So,
flower?
this was a reference to the movie The Blue Dahlia that was out at the time. This is something that isn't quite clear. Others say it was a nickname that was given to her before death because she liked to wear flowers in her hair. Some people spread the
Oh,
rumor that Short was a prostitute
yeah.
or sex worker, while others claim that she liked to tease men because she was a lesbian.
And I will just say to fact check this again against this 2006
The
film,
movie,
because
right?
the 2006 film is like lesbians galore.
Everywhere, lesbians everywhere.
And there is,
Yeah.
I did just a quick fact check on that
Yeah.
because I was like, really? And the fact check said, definitely not a lesbian.
So, but as famous as the case was, authorities had tremendous difficulty figuring out who was behind it. However, members of the media did receive a few clues. So, on January 21st, about a week after the body was found, the Examiner received a call from a person claiming to be the murderer, who said he would be sending Short's belongings in the mail as proof of his claim.
Oh.
Shortly after, on the 24th, the Examiner received a package with Short's birth certificate, photos, business cards, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen on the cover in Boston gold. Yeah.
Ooh.
Also included was a letter pasted together from newspaper and magazine letter clippings. So we are talking ransom note
Ransom
galore.
note. Yeah.
Iconic.
That read Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow. So, all of these items have been wiped down with gasoline, leaving no fingerprints behind. Though a
Smart.
partial fingerprint was found on the envelope, it was damaged in transport and it was never analyzed.
Ugh.
So, yeah, I know. They were probably like, yes, and then nothing.
No, yeah.
On January 26th, another letter arrived. The handwritten note read, here it is. Turning in Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Avenger. The letter included a location, so the police waited at the appointed time and place, but the author never
Didn't
showed.
show. Ugh.
Damn.
Afterward, I know, right? It's insane.
It's crazy.
Afterward, the alleged killer sent a note made of letters cut and pasted from magazines, another
Okay.
ransom note, to the Examiner again. So this is all going to the Examiner, not
To
to
the
the
medical
police.
examiner, not to the detectives.
Not the medical
No, no,
examiner, the
no.
LA, the paper.
Oh, sorry, the paper.
That's okay.
News.
I believe it's William Randolph Hearst's paper was the LA Examiner. That
They want to be in the
said,
media. Yeah.
have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified.
What?
Mm.
Yet again, everything sent by this person had been wiped clean with gasoline, so investigators couldn't lift any fingerprints for evidence. But gasoline was also used to clean Elizabeth's body. So they did believe this is what
It
this
was
was
the guy.
actually
This
from the
is the
killer.
same
Yes.
person. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
and also, and to have more than
yeah,
one letter with like
right.
again, like the cutout and like the gas, like that's definitely a detail where it's like, okay, clearly you have a modus
Right.
operandi. Like this is how you're working. Yeah.
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 Mm.
So at one point, the LAPD had 750 investigators on the case and
Holy shit.
interviewed, right, more than 150 potential suspects linked to the Black Dahlia killing. Officers heard more than 60 confessions during the initial investigation, but none of them were considered legitimate. Since then, there have been more than 500 confessions, none of which have led to anyone being charged.
But this is a big
Wow.
thing that like crazy,
Wow.
mentally unstable people will
I know.
confess to crimes
At
and
this point,
again,
I think it's just crazy, though. I mean, like,
crazy. But people confess to crimes and it's like,
yeah,
investigators usually like that's also why like they'll hold back certain details of the
yeah,
crime or things where
Yep.
it's like,
right.
well, only the killer would know this. So if
Right.
you're saying things that are like, wildly
Right.
unhinged, they're like, okay, it definitely wasn't you because this doesn't line up or this doesn't match.
Yeah.
Like you're
Yeah.
not really the killer.
Yeah.
So the
500
the
people.
entirety of Elizabeth Short's autopsy has never been revealed because the police said that there were details in that only the killer would know.
Okay. And they've been
So to this
Now,
waiting.
day, there's
eh,
stuff that
to
still
to
isn't
this day,
public.
because at one point during the grand jury hearing, someone started to say it, and the judge was like, "Okay, that's enough. We don't
Oh,
wanna hear
wow.
anymore." Was the judge maybe bought off by somebody? We don't know, because now, because we have this FBI, like, Freedom of Information Act, you should be able to
Yeah.
get it. So, of the 18 LAPD assigned to the case, only 2 officers were from homicide. The rest were from what was called the Gangster Squad, which was a special unit of the LAPD formed in 1946 to keep the East Coast Mafia and organized crime out of Los Angeles. Also, rooting
They
out
were a
crooked
failure.
crops. They were a failure. They were targeting criminals like Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel. So that's interesting. Also,
Hmm.
on the gangster squad as an operative was Finis Brown, who was the lead investigator on the Dahlia case and notoriously crooked.
Oh,
We're
okay.
just leading up to next week. So, as time went on and the case went cold, many people assumed that the Black Dahlia murder was a date gone wrong or that Short had run into a sinister stranger late at night while walking alone. I mean, are you fucking kidding me?
Are you
That's
kidding me?
bullshit,
That
right? During the investigation, Elizabeth's purse and shoes were turned in by a gentleman who owned a cafe a few blocks from the crime scene. Someone had left them in the incinerator. They were
what?
brought in. They brought in Red Manning. Remember our good friend Red?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
police put the shoes and the purse with a bunch of the other shoes and purses, and they were like, "Hey, which one is,
Which one's
Elizabeth
yours?
Short's?" And he was like, "That one. She had that purse and those shoes when I dropped her off at the Biltmore," which makes me also think that Meryl's story was false because he's saying that those are the same shoes and purse she was wearing the day he dropped her off on January 19th. And Meryl says she saw her on, like, the 14th,
Yeah, that feels a little bit convoluted. Also, who
right?
are all these the heteronormative men noticing purses and shoes? But that's neither here nor there.
That's neither here nor there.
Maybe
So
he doesn't love his wife and he should have picked up Ethan short and things would have been
exactly.
different. Don't stop your last season Prada shoes at me, honey.
After 70 years, the Black Dahlia murder case remains open. But in recent years, a couple of intriguing and chilling theories have emerged. So, some of our suspects that we're going to cover next time include Robert Red Manning, a bellhop named Leslie Dillon, Dr. George Hodel, remember that name?
Doctor?
Mhm. Mark Hansen, if we remember that guy,
Oh yeah.
Bugsy Siegel,
Yeah.
Norman Chandler, the publisher of the Los Angeles Times, and
What?
even the actor Orson Welles.
Citizen Kane?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So they have no fucking idea.
Next time, yes. Next time, we are going to talk about these theories. We're going to get into all the suspects. We're going to speculate wildly.
I cannot even wait. Jen, spectacular. Olivia's meal has been ruined, but dare I say it was worth it? Like,
God, I just want to keep talking about it, but we'll do it next week. We'll do it next week.
Okay.
next week. Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
listeners, this is going to be available a week early on our Patreon.
On Patreon, absolutely. Yep.
So if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get to hear this in a 1-2 punch. Otherwise, you got to wait 2 weeks.
Right.
So join, baby. All you got to do is $5 a month. That's
All
nothing.
right.
That's nothing.
Here we go. Season 1 ending next
Oh my
next
gosh.
time. And scene.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Wicked Sage Pod.
Follow us on Instagram and check out our Patreon for more exclusive content.
These deliciously wicked episodes drop every other Friday, so make sure you subscribe or follow and don't get left waiting in the wings.